So Jack's not here today?
Would you say, Rita?
Nothing, never mind. It's irrelevant right now. Good morning, everybody, and a happy belated Thanksgiving and a quick turnaround to Christmas here. The holidays are fast approaching.
Yeah, I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. All right, I'm gonna make sure everything's set here before I share my screen. All right, well, I think that's enough people to get started here. I'm going to share my screen. And by the way, everybody should be on gallery mode so you can see all the speakers. And then when I share the screen, you'll be able to change the size of the speakers portion versus the screen portion so you can follow along with any slides that are being shared. So I'm going to share my screen here. There might be a 1 or 2 second delay between screen shares, so I have to plan accordingly. So welcome everybody to the December 2nd quarterly CARD meeting with EGLE present. I'm Roger Rayle. I'm chair of CARD and chair of Site Residence for Safe Water. And I'll be trying to do some of the secretarial duties today because we still don't have our CARD secretary position filled. I'll talk about that later. So these meetings are recorded. They will be posted on YouTube. And we get a transcript and everything as part of that recording. So I'm going to turn it over to Jack Eaton, our executive director. This would be another position, a task that would normally be by the secretary, but for the approval of the previous CARD meeting minutes. So go ahead, Jack.
Okay, thank you, Roger. We need to take a vote on the approval of the October minutes. First, are there any corrections or suggestions for changes in the minutes?
Well, I did make this correction, but it doesn't show on this copy.
Yeah.
Where the J is here. So
Just a fix of my first name is fine.
no, what I did is I took out Beth, I think, and I think I deleted one character too far. But the official version is going to be right. Nothing else changed on this. Anybody else have any changes?
Seeing no hands, all in favor of accepting the minutes as proposed?
With my name change, so moved.
Yeah, agreed.
Aye.
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 See, I've already blown it. We missed
Aye.
Beth already. Are there any votes in opposition? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. We're going to move on to the agenda. Under our first heading is the EPA. I don't see a representative from the EPA, so I'm going to ask Georgia to speak on behalf of the Congresswoman.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. I believe that this was circulated with everyone, but just wanted to ensure that everyone saw that the state legislature, members of the state legislature, had written to EGLE Director Phil Roos, requesting that EGLE communicate to EPA that there is an overwhelming amount of support from both the state level and the local level that the site be added to the NPL. So they sent that to him, I think, on the last day of October, or maybe the very first few days of November. And then in response to that, Phil Roos got a letter over to our regional administrator at the EPA and Vogel, requesting that there is accelerated action taken on that. So we worked with our state partners on that because we had also just written to EPA a little bit earlier this year. And I just wanted folks to know that the state has done that also very recently. So there's this continued push on the EPA to make an accelerated decision, given that the NPL has not been formalized. So I just wanted everyone to know. I don't think that I have a copy of both the letter that the state delegation had sent to Phil Roos and then a copy of the letter that Phil Roos sent to the EPA, but I don't know if I can share them in this chat because they're PDFs. So yeah, it would be after this, the one that is on the agenda underneath the congressman's name. It's two different letters from that. So, but I'll try to figure out how to get it in here anyway.
These two are links.
Yeah.
If you want.
So it's obviously it's neither of those. I'm referring to two other letters. I will try to figure out how to get them into the chat just for reference purposes. Anyway,
send me the PDFs and I will add them to our archive and add them to the list.
I think that Dan Bicknell also tried to circulate them in the beginning of November, so it's possible that folks have them in their email inbox also. But if
send
not,
it to me. Make sure I get the right one. No, because sometimes.
Yeah. I'll make sure to get the right one to you, Roger.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, James.
So that being said, having the EGLE director contact Region 5, that is rather important communication. Georgia has the Congresswoman or anyone received a response, anything at all from the EPA?
At this point, I don't believe so. That was sent on November. Let me find the date on that. It was definitely still while the government was shut down. So that's adding another layer of delay.
Not even an interim then.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
That's unfortunate.
I think that that's something that we could ask about also in our follow-up with the EPA. But I think that letter is dated November 4th or something like that. I will go find it though, so that everyone has it.
Sure. It's kind of disappointing that there isn't at least an interim, which is just saying, thank you for your correspondence. We are reviewing this matter and in due process, we'll get back with you, even in terms of even just in terms of an update, in terms of a timetable. Something's better than nothing. The silence, I think, from my days being in a congressional office, to me I find it a little bit almost unprofessional, but that's just me. Anyway, my 2 cents. But that's I appreciate Georgia, yours, and Mrs. Dingell's, and frankly, it's great that having an EGLE director that carries a bit of firepower. So, I appreciate everyone's work here.
James, perhaps you can, along with Dan, can create a timeline of all of these letters and correspondence and make sure that our archive is complete.
Happy to.
Okay. Thank you, James. Georgia, do you have anything else from the Congresswoman?
Not other than to say that I think between the last meeting and now, obviously we had the longest government shutdown in history, which has now ended, of course. So we have definitely been in catch-up mode with our agencies, trying to get work done that was not done for 43 days there. I think that that's about it. And if there's anything that we can get you updates on from the Congresswoman and our team, then please let me know. We're trying to get through our end of year crunch time with the House in session right now. So thanks.
Well, thank you. And please convey our appreciation to the Congresswoman.
Georgia, at the last meeting or two, you said there was it was harder for congressional staff to get information from agencies, federal agencies this year. So is that part of the factor of getting answers besides the shutdown, outside the shutdown?
Yeah, it is for us in terms of reaching out to the legislative and congressional affairs folks that agencies typically have. That has certainly been more challenging. Although, in the case of the letter that we just discussed that Director Roos sent, that's something that it wouldn't have gone to a congressional affairs portal. Those are our contacts. This would have been reviewed by presumably the administrator's executive team. I have to assume that that's where that landed. So that I don't think would be a relevant note. It's just that the government was shut down. I totally understand the comment that some kind of correspondence acknowledging receipt would be good, but we wouldn't have been copied on that at any point since the letter came from Director Roos. So, but I mean, that's something that we should follow up on. I don't know if the other folks from EGLE here have any update on that. We're just aware of when it was sent and we were given that information at that time.
And in terms of staff who have left the EPA, has that affected your communications at all?
Yeah, it just makes it more difficult. There have obviously been mass federal workforce reductions, some of which occurred during the shutdown. So we just have fewer people to work with, and people who we had worked with previously who just aren't there anymore. And we're not going to learn about that until we've actually reached out to them. So it's been challenging to get in contact the way that we used to be able to.
Yeah,
but we're trying.
Yes, and we really appreciate that. I'm sure it's extra difficult because you're not even sure who to talk to anymore in some cases. All right, thanks.
Okay. Yes, thanks, George. I don't see Dan here today, so if there's no other comments about the US EPA, I'm going to move on to EGLE.
Jack, this is Mike. Does anybody know, for record-keeping purposes, who Bob is? Signed in Justice Bob.
I don't know.
I don't see them on the list.
Okay, it's Bob Bailey, isn't it?
Oh, there's Bob Bailey right there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
It took me forever to find my unmute. Sorry.
Alrighty. And so I'm going to turn this over to Chris now. Good morning, Chris.
Morning, Jack. Thank you, and thanks for having me here. You'll notice that I'm the only person from EGLE here, so unfortunately, Josh Mosier is out of the office, couldn't attend today. We also, I guess, I don't know if everybody here knows this, Andrea Munoz Hernandez, our district supervisor, recently departed for a new position in the Water Resources Division. She's now the section chief over there in the permits section. So unfortunately, we are without Andrea these days, and that'll factor into some stuff I'm going to mention shortly here. But really quick, I did want to sort of address some discussion about the EPA. I know that it sounds like Congresswoman Dingell's office has not been getting a whole ton of communication from them. I did want to just let you all know that, we at EGLE have been working with the EPA since, I want to say, late September, early October, in support of the listing on the MPL. Obviously, Director Roos's letter was sort of one facet of that. Unfortunately, I'm not really at liberty to give a whole lot of details other than, EGLE's position is that we do support listing on the national priorities list. We've been working very closely with the EPA, and we still continue to. When we're at a position where we can give you some more information, I'll be happy to share all the stuff that we've been doing. But that has been taking up quite a bit of our Gelman related time, sort of supporting that listing. So we do want that to go forward, and we've been working very closely with the EPA. And I also want to give kudos to their staff because they were working very diligently through that shutdown, which I'm sure was difficult. So we really appreciate them, and we are working with them to support that listing. I just wanted to give a couple of other updates. The first one regards the surface water sampling. Unfortunately, because of the timing of Andrea's departure and another very important project manager in our district, I have not been able to organize that sampling yet. However, I do currently have plans to go out and do that sampling next week. The weather is not ideal, so unfortunately, I think what is probably going to happen is I'm going to be taking a limited set of samples, focusing around the Allen Creek, Third Sister Lake, the outfall on the Gelman property, and a couple of other locations. Unfortunately, 2025, I don't believe that we're going to be able to get the full data set. But, for example, some of the locations that we sample have been non-detect for the last 5 years. So we're going to kind of, put those on the back burner and return to them in future years when we sort of do have adequate manpower and staffing to, get the full field experience in. So, as soon as we get some of those results, I'll be sharing those. But like I said, it's going to be a little bit more limited scope this year. So that information should be coming soon. We did want to at least get some of that data in this calendar year. Let's see. The only other item that I really have right now is the municipal contingency plan. We did receive an updated version of that from Gelman on the 19th. I believe that is on our remedial information data exchange RIDE. So you can see a redacted version of that where the personally identifying information has been removed. We have 56 days to review that. So, we should be responding relatively shortly. My first review was that they did respond to a lot of our comments from the letter that we sent them in response to that contingency plan. We kind of agreed that they don't necessarily need to have the full engineering specifications because the trigger process that is incorporated in the consent judgment does allow for some, time to do that engineering assessment while the trigger process is ongoing. One of the big, I think, additions to that municipal water connection contingency plan is the inclusion of a flow chart that really breaks down the trigger process and how things would proceed in the event of either residential wells or the sentinel monitoring wells exceeding any of those criteria in the consent judgment. So I haven't gone through that plan with a fine-tooth comb, but my initial review looks like they really did address a lot of the major substantive concerns that we had. So I think that's a positive thing. Haven't got a whole lot of information about the marshy area. We did meet with their consultant, ERM, and our Water Resources Division also gave them some feedback on the permits that they'd need to get for doing some of that pilot study. Unfortunately, I haven't heard any movement on that, but I really do believe that Gelman's attention has sort of been bent on the EPA and the work that we've been doing towards listing on the national priorities list. So once that I think clears up, we'll have a little bit more focus and start moving on some of these things that have been hanging in limbo. So I think that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Rita, I see you got your hand up. What kind of question do you have?
Just a quick one. Could you remind us of what you're referring to as the trigger process?
The trigger process? Yes, absolutely. It's basically, if in the event that, for example, one of the residential wells in Scioto Township exceeds 3 parts per billion, and or any of the Sentinel monitoring wells exceed, I think there's a couple of different trigger levels. Some of them are 4.6 micrograms per liter. Some of them are 7.2 micrograms per liter. But if that does occur, then there's sort of this trigger process that like, okay, we go verify that that was an exceedance, and then we increase our monitoring schedule. And, based on the results of those monitoring schedules and the results of what we find, then we may need to start implementing the municipal water connection contingency plan or providing bottled water, et cetera. And so that's detailed a little bit more clearly in that submission. And I think that's really the first, obviously it's in the CJ, but that's sort of the first time that we've really seen that flow chart that sort of illustrates like, okay, these are the steps, this is what we'll follow. And I was glad that Gelman did provide us that information.
Yep.
Thanks, Rita. Vince.
Yes, thanks for coming, Chris. Appreciate it.
Of course.
I wanted to ask if there's going to be any data collection for the Slauson Middle School area. There had some readings come back a while back, and I was curious how it's coming along.
Mm-hmm.
Any data on that?
Yes. So I think I did provide some data. We had our geological services section out there in October, and they sampled those wells and gauged those wells, which means like reading the static water level, how deep is the groundwater at each of those locations. I think like I said, I shared that information with Roger. The results, the concentrations in the groundwater there are basically within the same, order of magnitude and margin of error as what we got in the summer. We've had a little bit of trouble. We needed to send our guys back out there because when they initially surveyed the elevations of those wells, they did it to a arbitrary datum. However, for Gelman, we needed those relative to sea level. So the guys went back out there. I believe they were out there November 19th collecting that data. So at this point, I'm basically just waiting for their report to hand over to Gelman, who has agreed to sample those Slauson wells going forward. And, I just want to say that, the concentrations in the groundwater are pretty close to what we observe in the Allen Creek drain. So I think we do have a pretty good handle right there. Now, obviously, we want to see a more comprehensive down gradient investigation that will fully assess the fate and transport of the dioxane as it approaches the drain and interacts with that. And part of that is going to be, Gelman crunching the data that they collected from the GSI investigation that they did in the Allen drain. My understanding is that data collection has completed and they're sort of crunching their numbers too. So, obviously the EPA stuff is kind of taking a little bit of precedence. I think everybody's got their focus there. But once that kind of clarifies, obviously we'll still be focused on the down gradient, the GSI component, et cetera.
Well, thanks, Chris. I did have a concern about, we did find that we had, I think it was a max of 50 part per billion in the Allen Creek.
That's right.
West Park. And I'm concerned that Slauson Middle School may have some exposure, probably not as high as, I don't know how high it would be in Slauson, but that's something I think that a lot of people are concerned about, and I think it warrants to being careful about it, making sure that there's a way to reduce exposure if it starts to happen, or if it's comes along later, I don't know.
Mhm. Well, we are obviously watching it. We're receptive to the community's concerns about what was in the groundwater down there. That was sort of our impetus for getting those permanent monitoring wells.
Yep.
Fortunately, at this point, doesn't look like we have anything in the groundwater above any of the EGLE criteria that we would be regulating to. It also doesn't exceed, the kind of number that your group has come up with for evaporation from like a wet basement. But that said, we do want to keep an eye on these numbers and make sure that there aren't any exposures happening. But at this point, it doesn't look like we haven't, enough dioxane down there, and we certainly want to keep tabs on what's coming down. So we will be keeping an eye on that in the future.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Vince. Thank you. And James.
Thanks, Chris. Just a comment in terms of what we talked about before, in terms of when we talked about communication between the state and the US EPA regarding MPL. I'm very encouraged to hear that you have been working with personnel on the MPL listing and why you can't disclose the nature. I will take that as forward movement, and good news I will take any day of the week, anytime, anywhere. So thank you for that. So
Of course,
on that,
yeah.
on that good sentiment. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Definitely. Yeah. Our position is that we want to see the listing go forward so that we can get a fair shake at maybe a better remedy. So, it's been our goal to support that, and we're going to keep going towards that end.
Thank you, Chris.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Chris, since we're talking about the Slauson thing, and I've got the spreadsheet up here of what the data was during the drilling,
Mm-hmm.
and then of the screened areas when they were sampled.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that struck me was that there was dioxane found from the surface all the way down to 50 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't find another location, even back at the core site, where there was that distribution without a non-detect.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a concern? Because there's dioxin all the way from the surface down to at least 50 feet.
Mm-hmm. I would say that is, so Arch Environmental, they're the folks that did that sampling. They may have done a little bit more than we actually kind of asked for. We had kind of asked them for every 10 feet for the vertical aquifer sampling. And that's kind of what Gelman does when they drill like a new well, right? They're doing vertical aquifer sampling at 10-foot intervals. Now that said, like if you went somewhere else in the plume, right, and poked a hole down and we're looking through like a saturated sand unit that's transporting water with dioxane, I believe that you would probably see something relatively similar, right? Like there would be a distribution of it in that entire permeable space. So to me, that's not necessarily like a red flag or, outside of the realm of what I would consider normal, right? We think that basically the sand or gravel units are what is transmitting groundwater with dioxane.
Right. But it's uniform.
Relatively.
Except for a couple places where there's lesser amounts. But are there going to be well logs for these
Yes.
two locations?
Yes, I believe that Arch already kind of provided us with those. I'd have to go back over the log, but I believe that we did get the soil logging.
I should maybe take a look at that again to see if I have it. And also, we talked about these names for these wells as if they're temporary. Are those going to have some be renamed to something more permanent?
I would imagine that we will, like I said, I'm still waiting on the information from our geological services section. Once I have that report completed, I'm going to turn that over to Gelman, and that'll include, the coordinates of the wells, the construction, the soil logs, the samples that we've got so far. And then we will probably agree, like, my expectation is that they'll probably be like MWs 153 and 154. But I have not really had those conversations with Gelman yet, besides the fact that they do intend to carry on sampling those wells as part of the Eastern Area Monitoring Network.
Yeah, because that might be an issue because when it comes to who owns the wells,
Mm-hmm.
the name on it, so far I think the MWs are pretty much all Gelman locations.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but they might be on somebody else's property. So whether,
Right.
who's going to be responsible for someday in the future plugging that well,
Mm-hmm.
does the name going to indicate that? Anyway, that's a side issue that we can talk about later.
Definitely. But yeah, I agree. We do need to kind of iron out those details. Like I said, my expectation is that just so that we keep everything consistent, we'll probably just lump them in with, the current monitoring well naming scheme,
Okay.
just for continuity's sake. But that might change, but that's sort of my expectation at this moment.
Yeah. I'll have more to say about this during my chair update. Let me
Indeed.
go back to the agenda. So, anything else?
Not at this moment. Yeah, those are the things we've been making progress on in the last few months. So,
Well, thank you for your report. We appreciate your attendance. I don't see any other hands up, so I'm going to move along. Is there someone here from the county? Jenny?
I'm trying to get unmuted. Sorry. Okay. Oh, no. Lost it. Okay. Hello. Okay. So, Roger, is now a good time to talk about Slauson some more and what we've been doing there.
Oh, you want your image up?
Yeah, if this is where we want to go. Okay, so I guess just to add on to what Chris was talking about with the activities going on at Slauson, I wanted to share just a little bit. Roger put it up. This is just kind of like a basic schematic of how a closed loop geothermal system does work. So what they do is this system is drilled into the ground and it is not extracting groundwater. So a tubing gets placed within the borehole and it is filled with a glycol water mixture. And it is able to absorb heat from the earth in the winter and transfer heat from the building back into the earth in the winter to provide a relatively efficient, stable temperature. So that's the systems. There's also open loop, but that's not what is proposed at Slauson. So we have this closed loop system, and because it's closed loop and not extracting groundwater, it is actually not regulated under the state of Michigan's well code. But however, Washtenaw County, it fell under ours. So whereas a lot of times these systems are not permitted, generally they are not. Washtenaw County does permit them, and we look at them as kind of any other well permit that we have coming in. So we were actually reached out to by Slauson's consultant back and starting in like 2023, when they started looking at putting in these geothermal projects at all of the schools. And Slauson kind of was the last one to actually get through permitting to be installed, because when a proposal comes in for a well, what we consider a well or a well project, we do like a contamination review, right? It's part of our pre-drilling site inspection. It's what all of our sanitarians do, whether it's a drinking water well, or a geothermal project. And this one was obviously flagged because not only is it in the Plume area, it is near the school, and there's some concerns about flowing conditions in that area. So I know the school's consultant had actually even talked with Jim Brody a bit about this area. And so they hired Midwest Geothermal out of the Grand Rapids area. They were fantastic to work with, very great to communicate with. They wanted to make sure we were happy. And then we were also able to get the school together, Ann Arbor Public Schools, and their consultants, many of them, to talk about this project along with Chris at EGLE. Chris was like my first call to be like, this is what they're proposing, because while they're not extracting the groundwater, they're, proposing to drill hundreds of holes up to 800 feet deep on that property. So
Wait, how deep?
Up to 800 feet.
That's below bedrock.
It is, yes. Split bedrock. give or take 300 feet. It varies in our area, but so it's very deep. And then we were able to work through, they agreed to put in the test borings across on two different parts of the site to try to just get an idea of what levels of dioxane were there and if there were flowing conditions present that they were going to encounter. And then
Should I
they were
switch to Google Earth so people who haven't seen this can kind of get an idea where we are there?
sure. We also worked with Aaron with the city real closely too, for all this being in the you can correct me if I'm wrong.
We've actually got Gelman that's agreed to do the
Okay.
sampling down here from here on out. So it's part of their well network. So yeah, once I turn over that info, we expect them to carry on sampling.
So these are the two locations for the two monitoring wells, and then all these other dots, I presume, are the where they're drilling down to apparently 800 feet deep to have the geothermal, which means they'll be going through contaminated layers during the drilling.
Yep. So we actually got them to agree to surface case to that first confining layer, all those borings. So it is quite an increased expense on their part.
Explain surface case, please.
So what they do is they typically say you have like a 6-inch borehole that you're going to drill. They're going to do a wider one like 8 or 10, and they're going to drill this wider borehole into the first confining clay layer. And then that essentially seals off the upper aquifer where the contamination is. And then they drill through it down into the deeper, to the depth that they're going with the smaller drill bit. And then that's then you have that sealed off with the upper casing, so you're not getting cross aquifer mixing there as you would.
That's a lot of sealed.
Yes, so it's not a permanent casing. They will pull it out when they're done after they've grounded it back up, and then they'll use it on their next hole.
How many layers of aquifer are they going through?
We were only concerned about that upper aquifer with the dioxane contamination in it.
Because the deeper aquifer isn't contaminated yet?
Correct. Yep. And this isn't just, I mean, this was a big deal for this area. But it's not like we do this for every well that comes to us. So we've had some proposed in downtown Ann Arbor near old contamination sites. We've done it there. We've had them do a test well and sample it, and we've come up with like a plan based on those results to protect environment or to prevent aquifer cross contaminations. So this was just kind of a big one. But these geothermal projects are becoming more and more and more prevalent. It'll go back to looking like the field. So you can't really tell from Roger's Google Earth. He's got the site map overlaid. You can see the Allen Creek drain runs through there. That's that red pathway. And then in the field area, southeast of there is where all these borings are going to be put. They have, as far as I'm aware, they have a permit now, but they haven't, as far as I'm aware, they haven't not started drilling yet. And they'll be out there for a very long time to get all of those in. And they'll connect them all the tubing together, cross the drain and go into the building. So they've been working with the Water Resources Commissioner's Office to get permits to cross the drain. And then they're grouted back up to the surface. They're sealed off, and then there's tracer wire so that you can locate them, but then they're covered up and it'll go back to looking just like a field. No.
I just want to say thank you and Chris and all the other people working on this, because from those actions, and I'd like to maybe see a more definitive timeline of all the communications so that everybody understands how much work it took to get this to happen. because these two wells provide the only permanent down gradient shallow groundwater monitoring so far to that location. Something we asked for almost a decade ago. We're just now getting it, but it took a lot of work. And kudos to all the people involved to get that happening. And thanks for that update. I'll say something more about that during my chair update, but I just want to say thank you to everybody involved.
And then besides Lawson, I don't think we have any other major updates. At least not that my group has to share.
So Rita has her hand up.
Oh gosh, I think I just forgot what I was going to ask, but it's basically, I'm just a little bit concerned. So how confident are you that the dioxane is limited to an aquifer at a certain a certain elevation? I mean, I just remember hearing from Lemke and other hydrogeologists that these aquifers are very interconnected. And I remember when we used to have C and D aquifers in Western Ann Arbor, and now we say, well, it's really all one aquifer. But anyway, they basically move through different elevations sometimes because of interconnections. And even, I just remember this also from bedrock where, drilling these deep wells, injection wells, at first it would say, well, we get through the bedrock and nothing will happen. Well, it turns out there's cracks in the bedrock. And so I just wonder, how confident are you that this is going to work?
So Rita, I'll take that question because you are absolutely correct. Our kind of conceptual model is that a lot of the aquifers are basically interconnected, right? I think our working model is that there are two aquifer layers in the area. The one that's near the surface that we are now we're positive it has dioxane in it, right? And then there's a lower one beneath this confining unit. We don't have any constraints really on whether there's dioxane there or not. It's possible, certainly. What our kind of goal was is if there isn't anything down there, we want to prevent that cross-contamination, which is why we sort of structured this way, right? If there's dioxane in the upper aquifer, we want to prevent, we don't need to necessarily know if it's there or not. It could be, but we just want to make sure that it doesn't leave the upper aquifer through apertures that they'd be creating with these borings, if that makes sense.
Well, with the borings, but maybe also naturally occurring just because of shifts in the geology, or there's sand here where there was clay over there. I don't know. I'm not
Definitely.
a hydrogeologist.
No, that's absolutely a possibility. And, without any further constraints going deeper, because we couldn't, in good faith, we couldn't ask, the geothermal people to go down to 300 feet and characterize all of the groundwater, right? So it was kind of like, we're pretty sure there's water here. We're going to test for it. And if it's there, we want to make sure that nothing gets down. Certainly, there could be, geologic features, elsewhere or in the area that could let it into that lower aquifer, possibly. However, we just basically wanted to say, if there is in this upper aquifer, we want to prevent it from going below. We can't necessarily stop it from getting in there elsewhere, but we can certainly stop it, with these double casing techniques.
Well, I guess my point is just that I know you can't stop it getting in elsewhere, but if it is at an layer, at an elevation you're not expecting, hitting that pipe, and the lack of a seal just is a possibility. So, okay. Well, I appreciate the acknowledgement that it's not 100% sure thing, and the explanation. Thanks.
As you see, I'm looking at the nearby monitoring wells up gradient, or a little bit to the north, and there's dioxane in all the layers, just the shallow layer. So these are supposedly distinct aquifers at that location, but some of them may be interconnected.
That's right.
So perhaps when they're drilling these over the next months or years, they should be doing occasional sampling from their drilling.
Yeah, maybe just a few. I know what you're saying, that it's hard to ask them to do a lot, but maybe thanks.
And with contingencies of, what do you do if you find a higher level deeper? what should you do then? Somebody should be thinking about this.
So I think the important point here is that while there may be movement of dioxin from level to level just naturally, like we've seen elsewhere, the method that they're using to drill here is meant to not make it worse.
Thank you, Jack.
It may
But only
happen,
from one aquifer or by a certain elevation. That's the point, is it only separates at a certain elevation.
but it may have, if none of this drilling had happened, it may have
I know.
moved from layer to layer, without the drilling. And the method they're using for the drilling is just to make sure that the drilling doesn't make it worse than it would have been otherwise. Jeff has got his hand up.
Yeah. Hey, hi everybody. I've been absent for a while, so I'm glad to be back. So this I've been hyping geothermal for a long time and trying to get them to do it in these subdivisions that come in and stuff and so on. So is there concern not just in the mixing from, the horizontal or vertical mixing, but is there concern that as these more places do these geothermal wells, these geothermal well fields, that it can affect the flow of the aquifers itself in any way? And I guess the second question is there Ms. Khan said that there's sort of the county intercedes when these are like treated like well permits, right? And so there's a standard procedure in place when a developer comes and says, we're going to do a closed geothermal loop and so on. And like, you are always ready to intercept that and study it for conditions that could affect this.
Yeah, I guess with the caveat,
plume?
if it's a vertical closed loop system where they're using a drill rig to drill deep.
Right.
There's also the horizontal where if you have a big open area, you can lay them shallow.
Yeah, I've been on jobs where they do the trench ones,
Yeah, the trenches we would not look at. We
Oh,
still
okay.
recommend that they maintain all the same isolation distances, but we're only permitting the vertical borings,
Okay.
which we see more often, just because a lot of, at least on the residential air level, because a lot of the homes don't have big open areas to lay the trenches. They don't have giant yards necessarily, especially around the city center. There's also open loop systems, which are extracting water. So whereas a closed loop shouldn't impact an aquifer system, the open loops very well can.
I mean, like everybody's talking about the Saline data center, right? So if we had one of those that was on top of the Plume and they were doing open loop, they'd be stirring dioxin in with their cooling.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, but I missed the first. I got to go back and catch up. It's been like what, 4 months, so at least. So I'll catch up. Thank you.
Welcome to our world.
We have videos available of our meetings. So go ahead, Vince.
I just wanted to let people know that Roger brought up this map showing the green area, and that is near surface groundwater. It's artesianing areas, so the groundwater is very close to that surface. If not, in some places, it's probably at the surface. So it's just, just to let people know that if it's contaminated, it's going to go in a lot of different directions. And just to let people know what we're looking at. So, thanks.
Yeah, that's a good point, Vince. And so that was also part of the reason we wanted some test borings around there, is because if they do encounter artesian conditions, depending on how much pressure is in those lower aquifers, we want to make sure they're properly controlled when they're grouting. So then there's more stringent requirements for the grout for those borings.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Jenny? Thank you for your comments today. I didn't notice, but Yusuf is in attendance, and so I'm going to ask whether he has any updates. Oh, go ahead, Rita.
I just want to make a quick comment. Well, under the county, I understand that Kristen is not here today because she's receiving her recognition award for 25 years working at the Washington County public health system. And in this day and age, when being a public health worker is not often applauded, I just thought it would be nice to just extend from our group to Kristen some congratulations and gratitude for her work with our group, as well as you, Jenny. But,
Well, I'm
but
glad
this
you
is
know
her
that.
I
day.
haven't been here that long, but I'll make sure I let her know that you said that. That was very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I got an email from her saying she wasn't attending, but she didn't say why. So
Mhm.
that's good.
Well,
Good to
well, I've been writing with Kristen up to Lansing for some meetings, and maybe that's why she sent it to me. But anyway, I'm glad to share it because I do think it's very important that we have the support from the county and the state, and the Representative Dingell's office. All of this support really means a lot, I think, for CARD.
Indeed. Indeed.
Jim has
Jack,
this.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Concerning these wells that are going in for the closed loop, the data centers, if they have the water that they use, they can't recycle it because of the byproduct that comes out of the when it goes through the system. So are these systems, it says it's recyclable, but is there a point where it's not recyclable and it has to have new water in the system again?
So with a closed loop, they do add, they'll like top it off essentially, just a little bit of potable water, and it's in there with glycol. An open loop system where they're withdrawing the groundwater, they're not supposed to add anything that is not like food grade safe. So that's also something that's looked at because a lot of times they want to put in inhibitors like bacteria inhibitors, corrosion control substances, because we have very high iron and hardness in Washtenaw County. So we try to just generally discourage folks from open loops because they foul up. And then once they foul up, you're looking at acid washing screens, and it's just kind of a pain and much higher ongoing maintenance. So they shouldn't be adding anything because we want them to not be discharging anything on the other end. Now, the data centers that I'm aware are all essentially using closed loop systems. So they're using water for like heating and cooling and like topping off for humidity control, but they're not doing open loop. They kind of have like a closed loop internal system to try to cool all that
For the
equipment.
data centers, Jenny?
Yes. Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sure they're different, depending on where you go. From the local ones where we know they're using well water, they're not separately doing geothermal. They are just pulling water off their drinking water well and using air cooled systems for versus water cooled systems, which use much more water.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm going to move on. Inadvertently, I skipped Yusuf when I was going through this, and I see that he's in attendance. Do you have anything to report, Yusuf?
It's okay, Jack. I kind of snuck in, so happy to be here, and want to add my shout out to Kristen for all the wonderful work that she does, and to our health department employees who have been fantastic on this issue and so many others. And as Rita said, at a time when it's hard to be a public servant, we have some of the best in Washtenaw County that are doing this work. So we appreciate all of you for all the work that you do. And just to note on the data center front, I went to the Saline protest last night. Very well attended, even in extremely cold weather. Great speakers, and I thought some really good issues were brought up. Obviously, this is something that I, as an elected official, care very deeply about, and have been, working with groups all across the county, pushing back against these data centers. So I think it's something that we all need to lean in on. And I think, what I've been messaging is whether it's the dioxane plume or whether it's the, gravel mine in Ann Arbor Township or the data centers, or there's an assault on our environment right now happening, and the landfill is another one. And we need to all kind of be working together to make sure that we're protecting our earth and, natural resources in our community. So in terms of a county update, I don't have a legal update, but I do just want to say a thank you to Roger and to Vince, Rita, James. There were others as well that attended that I'm blanking on, but to all those that attended environmental council meetings, we had an in-person listening session that many of you attended and spoke at to raise awareness about this issue with the environmental council. And then obviously Roger presented at our last meeting. And so, just want to thank you for taking up, my suggestion to do that. I think many of the environmental commissioners, honestly, were not as aware of this issue as many of you are, because it is a complex issue. And even though it's been going on for a long time, it's easy for people to not think about it on a daily basis. And so I do think that this conversation is going to be an ongoing one with the Environmental Council. And I encourage all of you to, continue to stay involved, continue to come to the Environmental Council meetings. And I do hope that ultimately we can take an action related to this, whether, even if it is just as sort of symbolic re-upping of the county's commitment to CARD and to this, what we're advocating for. So that hopefully will be coming soon. And I know that our chair, Michelle Dietrich, has been in communication with Roger and others in this group about how to move forward. So looking forward to that as soon as it makes sense. So that's what I have. Thanks. Oh, and then Rita's hand is up.
I thought the listening session was very good. I know that usually the environmental council meetings are on Zoom. And we got kind of a late notice on the last listening session. I wonder if there was a way if there were going to be other listening sessions, like, are they going to be once a quarter or every 6 months or anything? And if we could get like a notice of it and get it a little bit in advance.
So I would contact Beth Gibbons, who's the resiliency officer for the county. She's probably the best one to get in touch with on that. Her email should be on our website. I don't have it off the head here, but that's probably how you would get on the communication list. I will say that in terms of past practice, we've been doing, this was our first listening session that we did. We had in-person meetings once a year since basically the pandemic. And actually, I take that back. We've only had, this was our second in-person meeting since the pandemic, moved everything to online. I think that there's currently talk about moving to a more frequent in-person meeting cadence. And there's also the issue that I have been beating the drums on for a while now about the necessity of in-person meetings to comply with the Open Meetings Act. And so I think that finally there are some legal cases post-pandemic that are indicating stronger and stronger that, yes, in-person meetings are something that's important. And so there's going to be likely a movement towards more of those in the coming years. So, but to answer your question, email Beth and she'll get you on whatever communication distribution list we have.
Okay, I'll do that. And then just once again, I thought it was a very helpful listening session and having it in person like that. Not only was it wonderful with all the food, but it was just well done, I thought. So
yeah, Michelle does a really good job. I mean, she's been an awesome chair and really has led the Environmental Council in the right direction. And I think it was really her idea to push for such a listening session. So if you get a chance, or if you see her, if you want to shoot her an email and just thank her for all the great work she's doing.
Okay, thanks.
I thought it was great. I think once a year is what they were suggesting, and I think that's a good timing because it takes a lot of work to add that, and the people that can't travel really can't go there. So I think even if it's in person, they should have a Zoom aspect to it, so people can at least watch and maybe participate remotely. I can't imagine getting this number of people for our monthly meetings together every month like we used to, and still have the depth of displays and communications that we have with the Zoom meeting. I think the Zoom meetings is, the fact that COVID pushed us this way, I think is a silver lining to the pandemic, and that we can now avoid sometimes hours of travel and getting a location and getting all the logistics and the recordings done. For as far as card meetings go, we may want to meet again in person as a hybrid, but I really like the Zoom myself. I can't imagine trying to manage all this with an in-person thing. So I just throw that two bits in.
Yeah, our meetings typically when we do in person, they are hybrid. So there's always a virtual option for people to call.
Okay. Thank you, Yusuf.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Are there any more comments or questions regarding the county? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to Ann Arbor Township. Mike, do we have anything from the township?
Not relevant to our issues here.
All right. Moving on to Scioto Township. Kathy, do you have anything?
No updates on the PFAS or the fire suppression well. However, given some of what Yusuf just said, I do have a potential emerging issue in Scioto Township. It has to do with the city of Dexter's request to annex a 45-acre parcel that is currently in Scioto Township. And they've just started this process. They haven't worked out the details. EGLE is involved, but part of what's going to be an issue for Scioto Township is that the developer, the landowner, is proposing putting in a high velocity community drinking water well on this property. And it has potential impacts on the area, the aquifer, and there are a lot of drinking water wells in the area. So we have hired an expert witness, Dr. Stephen Wright, who is also consulting for Ann Arbor Township, I learned. And he's reviewing the situation. He's prepared a preliminary report. It's been redrafted a couple times. We're going to have a presentation to the SIO board at our next meeting, which is next Tuesday, December 9th. He's identifying potential issues because there's a lot that's unknown here. So this is an evolving situation.
Is this the location where it is?
Oh,
There's Dan Huey. Here's Dexter Ann Arbor. Here's Baker Road. Isn't it right in here someplace?
yes, it is in there someplace, but I would need to show you a map. I can't tell from your map, Roger.
I saw it in one of the news articles.
Yes.
It had this. I think it
Yes,
had this
it's that
shot
location.
from this intersection right here, looking this direction.
Yes,
But I don't know how big the parcel is. I don't have the parcel.
45 acres. It's 45
Yeah.
acres.
So it's going to be pretty big.
I can't say anything yet until this report is released publicly, but
Yeah.
there's a good possibility that SIO will not approve of the annexation, that we will be raising questions. So there's going to be a lengthy negotiation process with SIO here too.
Yeah.
I'll just put it that way.
My comment on that is that remember when the county did sampling after Bicknell discovered the dioxin in the Third Sister Lake, they did all the sampling around the site. They also found dioxin out near what was then a rest area in this area around Meddy Drive. I haven't seen any samples of any dioxin in this area since, but that should be looked at. If there's still dioxin in this area here, um, that may be unrelated to Gelman. And of course, this is also where the PFAS site is down here that we've just talked about. If there's dioxin here, would a well here draw that dioxin or any other contaminant through these neighbors here if it's a high capacity well? So that's something that should be looked at.
I'll pose that question to Dr. Wright.
And I'll be glad to
There
fill
is
consultant because obviously they don't have all the information because
We
that
don't.
about 80% of those original database that was done by the state health department at the time through the county, about 80% of that data is not in the current database, EGLE's database. So I may need to talk to a consultant to bring them up to date.
Roger, why don't you try to watch our next board meeting?
Yeah, I think I'm around then.
Okay. And Jenny, I'm going to want to talk to you a little bit more about this too.
No problem. Yep, happy to.
Thank you.
Bob has his hand up. Go ahead, Bob.
Bob.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi,
Hi,
Bob.
everybody. I was wondering if there was anything that we needed to ask about procedures for relocating monitoring wells due to the Scioto Meadow development potential. Are you familiar with what's come before the Planning Commission?
Refresh me.
Well, there's a property at the end of whoops, I said the wrong, I'm trying to remember the name of the road, but it has monitoring wells. It's on Parkland Plaza, that's where it is.
Oh, yeah.
There are monitoring wells that exist. Roger, you and I have spoken about this. And
Yeah,
Roger,
I have something to say about this during my update too.
well, perhaps we can wait till then, but my question was the developer has acknowledged that there are wells there and they have been in communication with EGLE, I believe, and it might be you, Chris, I don't know.
Okay.
And they want to relocate them so that they can put houses in. So is there a procedure that's been established under the CJs for relocating wells? And I want to make sure that we go through the right processes when we approve things for development. That's
Okay.
it.
We did talk about this before, and I was told that EGLE will have the final say on any relocation of wells and that they would be involved and that the developer will follow their recommendations. And that's all I know right now.
Okay. Roger had made a suggestion to me, and that was that perhaps the new located well should be drilled before the current well is capped, or, so that the relocation process might include some procedure like that. But perhaps they already exist, those procedures, and we could just make sure we keep them in mind when we approve things.
Yeah, because that didn't happen with the wells that were shut down in this location down here.
So if anybody had any comments
Makes
on
sense.
that, EGLE representatives, maybe
Yeah. My understanding of this is sort of in its infancy. I am aware that it is up for discussion. I believe I had a call with Jim Brody, who is Gelman's scientist and consultant. And my my recollection is that I think neither of us were that excited about the prospect of having to relocate those wells. But I haven't heard any follow up from that. So,
What does
one
that
thing I will
mean?
say,
What does that mean? You weren't excited?
we'd rather not have our wells, disrupted and then have to re-drill them. It's quite a large expense, especially the ones that have to go down to bedrock. It's Gelman's expense, but I think they'd probably prefer a workaround, and we'd like to not lose additional monitoring. This is another thing that I'd probably want to go like check up on, but my understanding is there might be some restrictive covenants in that area, like land use restrictions that may not allow for the relocation of any of those wells, provided, without like EGLE and Gelman's consent. But so I'd have to do some follow up to, be 100% sure about what I'm talking about. But yeah, I think preliminarily we don't really want to relocate those wells if we could avoid it. And hopefully we could get, some work with the developers to, pay attention to where those wells are and keep them intact. So,
well, they're aware, but we just want to make sure that the right decisions are made.
Certainly.
This is not the first time wells have been relocated and we've re-drilled. Wells have been shut down and new wells have been put in to replace the wells that had a problem or were in the wrong location. There's probably 10 of them that are 10 wells, 5 or 6 sets, something like that.
Yes, Kathy.
Bob, was this on your planning commission agenda recently?
It was, and it's come up before. It's been on there more than once.
Yes. Did the planning commission recommend approval?
Not the first time, and the second time I'm trying to remember how it went. I recommended not, but I think it. I think it's going through, and Kathleen Brandt is the lone dissenter, I think, on that. So she'll be bringing her part of the discussion to the board. You could talk to Kathleen.
I will.
Yeah.
So it was recommended for approval at your last meeting?
I believe so.
But we don't have the minutes yet. That's why I don't know about it.
Right.
So
let me ask you this.
Again, just let me interrupt for a second. This shows that it takes a village to handle problems like this.
Yeah.
Without CARD having discussions like this where we try to bring other people in, how would this ever happen?
That's right. Thank you, Roger.
Okay, I have a question now for Chris. Chris, has Jim Brody or anyone working on this issue had discussion with the developer as to the placement of these wells?
My understanding is that it was only like a preliminary discussion, like these wells are here. We are sort of, I'm aware that conversation has started, but I don't have any further information. So I apologize that I can't give more detail.
We would need to know this before it comes to the township board for a final decision.
Yeah, I understand. Well, I can follow up with Jim, see if he's heard any more. But like I said, he hasn't followed up with me. But yes, I'd be glad to. Because
this might be proposed to come to the township board agenda soon. And maybe this needs to be stopped until we have definition here on this issue.
Certainly. Yeah, I'll follow up with Jim and get back in touch with you, Kathy.
Okay. You have my township contact information, right?
I think I at least have your email.
Okay. I think we've corresponded before.
I believe so too. So,
yeah, okay.
I'm certain I'll turn all the levers to get in touch with you once I know more. Okay, just in case I can't find any of the right info. So,
if I find out this is scheduled for the next township board meeting, I know it's not on the agenda for next week's meeting, but we have a meeting December 23rd, and if it's scheduled to go on that agenda, I'm going to need to be in touch with you sooner.
And you may have a little bit more time, Kathy, because I believe it's just the rezoning from PUD to MR3, and it's not the actual site plan yet.
Okay.
So breathe deeply, and I think we have a little time.
Okay.
That's good to know. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Kathy and Chris, anytime that you're dealing with something that involves dioxane, feel free to CC cardwc@gmail so that Card has a record of that correspondence. Something we talked about at a meeting or should be talking about at a meeting so that we
Okay.
don't have to ask for it later.
Okay. I think that we've exhausted the Scioto Township.
Yeah.
Speaking on my behalf. So I'm going to turn this over to Aaron for the City of Ann Arbor.
Sure, yeah, thanks. So the city has been working with our local legislators to push for additional action on Gelman. The best bet, of course, at this point is the Superfund listing. So that effort has led in part to that October 31st letter. So at this point, we are just anxiously awaiting the EPA's response. I think at the last meeting I mentioned that Chris Svoboda was going to be presenting to the Ann Arbor Sustainability Commission. And so that has been rescheduled to January 13th. And so Chris, correct me if I'm wrong about that, but Chris will be presenting over Zoom on January 13th to the Sustainability Commission. And that's everything I have.
That is still my plan, Aaron.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Aaron, actually, I have a question that's kind of appropriate here. Since we were talking about the down gradient contamination near Slauson School, when I said that was the first permanent shallow groundwater sampling in that direction. Except the city has some locations at their former site, the maintenance building on where is it down here?
721.
Yeah, it's on Washington and this location here, right? Across from the Y.
Oh, 415.
Yeah. I don't have the layers popped up here yet to show where those are, but those are permanent wells, is that correct?
Yes, I believe so. And Patty would know more about that, but yes, I believe so.
That's correct. There are permanent wells there, Roger.
And so, assuming there's sampling done on that sampling should be part of the data that's accumulated and shown on EGLE's database, along with the other samples that the city is doing with their new wells back to the north and things like that.
Yeah, just to clarify, we're not actively sampling 415. Those have been used for investigations in the past, but we're not actively sampling that at the moment.
Any plans to sample that now that we know that there's more dioxane heading that way?
No plans at this point. We are trying to sell that property. And so I don't know what the future of those wells will look like. They might end up being capped depending on what that development looks like. They might be used again for some additional investigation there. And I know Patty's team is doing some work actively at that site to get it prepped. But no, I don't believe that we will be planning to do any sort of long-term monitoring at that site at this point.
And I want to make sure that we have the well logs. I think we do for those wells, so that we can gauge what we know about those locations. So I may be double checking with you on that to make sure I have the correct well logs.
Yeah, that sounds great. Happy to share that.
And were you involved at all in the Slauson School decision making?
Was the city?
Yes, with the city involved?
Yeah, I was involved in some conversations, kind of going back and forth on figuring out the long-term monitoring plan for that. And I think everyone was pleasantly surprised that Gelman has agreed to pick up that sampling. So that is great.
Thank you for that involvement, because again, it takes a village.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I want everybody to understand these things don't happen automatically. It takes somebody at each stakeholder group to pay attention and to know who to contact and other stakeholders. And it's important that CARD review all that so we get ready for the next situation like this. So we know what it takes to make that happen and how we can make it happen faster and easier and have this as a precedent, as a good example of good government. That's what I want. Anyway, thanks.
Sure.
Go ahead, James.
I had to unmute myself. Just in terms of another issue regarding the city, and just to make everyone aware, the city is in its third draft of the comprehensive land use plan, and final comments are due January 5th. We had some concerns whether or not the Gelman Plume would even be acknowledged at all in terms of the plan. I've sent some communication on our behalf related to that. I've been in contact with Michelle Bennett. She is the point person working on the plan with respect to the Gelman Plume, and I'd like to redouble efforts in this month to get our point across that we do need to acknowledge that. And I think when we talked about 415 West Washington, certainly development that has to happen certainly needs to have the monitoring situation wells there, if anything is to happen. But at any rate, they're aware that we're concerned.
Yeah, and I believe there is some information that was included in the third draft on the Gelman Plume in there.
I hope so. I'll have to take a look at it. Thank you.
It is. There is a little write-up in there. Oh my gosh, I don't remember which section. I can look that up really quick and throw it in the chat.
Thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Yes, I just want to acknowledge the city's advocacy and support at this time, and mention that the mayor and the council for decades fought against the Superfund site. So I appreciate what they're doing now, but I think that we need to carefully monitor Ann Arbor politics to make sure that this continues to move forward.
Thank you. Any further comments regarding the city of Ann Arbor? I just noticed that Dan Bicknell has joined us at some point, and I missed it earlier. Good morning, Dan. Do you have anything to add to our conversation?
Good morning, Jack. No, just the document, though, that's been posted here is what was released as the evaluation of where the dioxane is moving in Scioto Township. And it does indicate in the review that in the northern areas of Scioto Township, where there's these residential wells that are impacting, the dioxane continues to increase over the years.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to the executive board section of the agenda. Rita, do we have anything from the Yale Superfund Research Center?
Crickets.
Similarly, on the subcommittee for the Allen Creek MS4 violation, I don't think there are any updates there.
No.
James and Yusuf, is there anything new on the polluter pay bill?
Not at my end.
Okay.
No, not that I'm aware of.
This might be a good time for me to interject a thought on this. Look at how many people are on the screen. This is a 2-hour meeting. Who's paying for the salaries of all these people for these 2 hours? And all the preparation time for all the other things we've been talking about. And what is the lost opportunity cost that we have to spend all of our time on this dioxane problem that we didn't cause?
Mhm.
What's the lost opportunity of taking care of other problems that we could be taking care of with our time? Just want to remind people of this. This is Gelman's dioxane problem. That's now our problem. They've successfully passed a lot of the cost and risk and time commitments to the public on this. I want everybody to keep that in mind. And this is not going to go away anytime in our lifetimes. This is not going to be here for our kids' lifetime, maybe our grandkids' lifetimes. Think of all the cost of that we're not getting reimbursed for. And this is why you have to pay attention early on for something like this. The Dioxane had a 20-year head start on us before we found it. And that was only thanks to Dan Bicknell and, and the guy that gave Saginaw Forest property to the university. Otherwise, that wouldn't have happened. So I just want to interject that at this point that, that this is not an automatic solution. We have to get together and we all have to work together on this. And thank goodness for the city to set up the IPC that then later grew into CARD, a few years later. And thanks for everybody for participating and taking time to do this because somebody's got to do it.
Well, as Muhammad Ali said, we pay for the planet.
I didn't get all that.
You broke up a bit.
Roger, this is kind of the rent that we pay for being on the planet.
Yep. Well put.
Yep.
So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the chair for his latest news and update.
Okay, let's see if I got anything queued up here, right? All right, I'll try to go through this quickly so we have time for questions. Again, thanks everybody who have involved in the Slauson geothermal monitoring wells. It took a village, and here's the information diagram that I've developed over the years to show all the stakeholders that are involved. And I didn't highlight which ones are directly involved in this Slauson School monitoring well, but it's several of them, and including, I think I added in Ann Arbor Public Schools in here. So this is a growing list of all the people, all the entities involved. And democracy's hard because you got to deal with all these different layers, but it's important that we have all the people involved and make sure the right thing happens. So again, that's my comment on that. I already showed the spreadsheet that shows the readings we got from those wells. Here is a diagram that I've shown before that shows where the site is, the two monitoring locations, and then using the Google Earth surface layers from LiDAR information. I positioned the two new monitoring wells, their relative depths. This one only goes down 20 feet, and this one goes down 50 feet. And then these are the prior one-time only RL locations. These should have been permanent, but they're one-time only. And this is what the two that had detection levels of dioxane 2.7 to 3.3 and 1.9 to 2.0. And again, to give you an idea that there's dioxane moving through this whole area. And of course, down gradient is where, from those two locations, are all these properties that are in here that could be affected. They're with wet basements and vapor intrusion of a new type of vapor intrusion with dioxins that likes to stay in water. So that's an issue. Again, I mentioned that it was surprising to me that there were no non-detect readings, but then again, they were only sampling every 5 feet. There might be some clay layers that are in there, but since that seems to be a major aquifer layer because it's where the Allen Creek runs, um, uh, it's something we need to be aware of. And we have the data now that there's a lot of dioxin and a lot of layers, and we need to pay attention. Again, these two new monitoring wells were outside Gelman's quarterly maps and outside EGLE's Rockworks maps. But the new Gelman third quarter 2025 Plume map that we just got has been extended. So here's the old one. Here's the new one. You can see it's extended here. And I've got close-ups of this too. So here's the old one. Here's where the monitoring wells were. And they, to their credit, extended their Plume map to show that that's now grown. So went from that to this, that to this. And you can see that not only this 7.2 parts per billion line got extended, but the 100 part per billion line also got extended. And 100 part per billion, of course, is where, correct me if I'm wrong, Rita, and Bob, but 100 is what our group came up with as maybe the vapor intrusion, a more correct vapor intrusion level. So if this 100 parts per billion gets down to this area, that could be a problem, and it's on its way, as shown by the Gelman Plume map. I'll let that sink in for a minute. Any questions on that before I go on? I want to give some credit to EGLE for updating their website interactive map. Their website still has some updating that it needs to be done. These latest updates, these are not the latest updates. They just haven't been updated. These are a year or 2 or 3 years old here. So hopefully, again, somebody's got to spend time that wasn't necessarily budgeted to take care of this if we're going to have accurate, up-to-date information that the public can rely on. I don't know how that's going to happen because we don't have the funding from Gelman that we should have. The settlement years ago was settling for 10 cents on the dollar to pay for EGLE's and back there, the DEQ's cost to do monitoring and do all the analysis. Right now, that money's probably gone. We probably have to spend taxpayer money to do all this, but if EGLE doesn't do it, then who does? But the map was adjusted and extended. So instead of just this area, we now have a lot of the homeowner well sampling data. These aren't all hits. These are where it was sampled for by EGLE through the county for the recent years. Now, what's not on here yet are the samples that SIO did.
Oh.
That data didn't get loaded in yet. And like my well was sampled, it was non-detect right here. But that should be, all that data should be included in a comprehensive database like this. And Chris, I think you said that might happen sometime soon, hopefully.
Yeah, Roger. As soon as we're, moved on to updating for the 2025 year, yeah, I'll make sure that the Scioto Township data gets into the database and it's reflected on the map. So
Yeah, because that actually happened before EGLE went in and did their sampling.
yeah, I think there's just, it would have been great to have that information in there. I just didn't give, the, excuse me, the consultant that we have that updates, the Rockworks model and makes sure that the database is, clean and everything. I just don't think I gave them that information. I just gave them, the lab reports that we got from the EGLE
Right.
lab.
Right.
So that
And
was
we
an
talked
oversight on
about
my part.
this.
That's
We
right.
talked about this and how there should be a standard input format for data that gets put into the EGLE database. I talked about this at prior card meetings. That was not a directive to the consultant that SIO used. And, they had the street names coded differently, and there's things like that. They're not using standard street names. So that's an indication of why the data is not there, is because there wasn't a standard operating procedure for inputting this data. Now there is a standard operating procedure for inputting data, and that's what EGLE has to use since Gelman quit sharing their own database. EGLE's had to recreate the Gelman database every month since about 2011, when Gelman went to a different database and shut off the EGLE's access to their database. So EGLE's been having to every month update the old Gelman database, and there's a standard input format for that, and that input format could be used by the townships and any other. The city's going to have some sampling done or anything like that to make it easier for EGLE to import this data on a timely basis and have accurate, up-to-date information. To not have that data that's now 5 years old on this map, that would be first priority even before putting in the 2025 data, is my opinion. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that. So it's nice that the new map is there, and I've downloaded that data and matched it up with the EGLE's 2024 August database that I downloaded earlier, and it matches up quite well. Except for some recent years, like I just mentioned, the township sampling is not all in there, and there's some maybe a couple other 2024 data that needs to be added. And some samples, I'll go over this with you later, Chris, with details, but some subsets of sampling data that were not included in EGLE's Rockworks modeling in maps were not put in the interactive map. And that's because maybe they're more surface layers, they weren't real aquifers or something like that. So that's an issue. However, the Rockworks found it included some older data that was not in the EGLE 2024 database. And so I have a question about that. Like, were these split samples that was somehow not put in the database? So I can point those out to you when we review this. So maybe we need to have whoever's on your staff that was dealing with this, so they know about these too. So kudos to them for finding this data. And I guess the question is, why wasn't this in the prior database? That probably means that it's not in Gelman's database, because Gelman might not be getting this data. So here we are with EGLE have a comprehensive database, but maybe it's not complete. Gelman itself may have a comprehensive database, and maybe they have data, maybe they have missing data. The two databases don't match. And I have a database that includes some stuff that I know you guys haven't put in yet, even from the early days. And again, someday it'd be nice to have a central, up-to-date, complete database that can be validated. But we're stepping in the right direction. We're moving in the right direction. It's just taking, again, we're not getting reimbursed for doing all this. We have to come up with it on our own. And that's the problem we have. If we can't define where the dioxin is, how fast it's going, if we don't have the data, how can we come up with a proper solution? So I harken back to a complete, up-to-date, reliable, accurate database that everybody can use. We're heading in the right direction, but we still have a way to go. A couple minor things on that. There's about a third of the wells had their top of casing data changed. And I'm not sure why. Did they find that the LiDAR was more accurate than Gelman's top of casing data? So that's a question I have for you, Chris.
Hey, Roger. Yeah, that's actually, so I believe in 2023, we received a list of wells that they resurveyed the elevations of.
Who did?
Gelman.
Gelman
Gelman
resurveyed?
resurveyed. That's
Okay.
right. And so, I would want to like kind of cross-reference the ones you're mentioning here, but I would believe that the explanation for that is those were the wells that Gelman sent us updated
Okay.
X, Y, and or Z information.
Okay.
So
I appreciate that. I figured it had to be something like that.
Indeed.
And then there were 240 entries that were coded wrong, I think, because they were coded as 0.25 parts per billion, which was kind of their value for non-detect, even though that's not one of the official detect values. And it said, yes, it was detected. When in fact, I think all those entries probably should be non-detect. No, they weren't detected. I think that's just a coding mistake on two sets of data that were put in. I think they just happened to be coded wrong. So we can go over that and get those corrected. But
Definitely.
otherwise,
We'll want to
great
do
job
that.
on that.
Yeah, and thanks for, your expert eye looking over these things because, there are things that we miss and things that, are imperfect, but we definitely want to update and reflect reality, not necessarily, what's there. So thank you.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, I like to have all the T's crossed and the I's dotted. And when I do a conversion, we used to do conversions over the week, overnight or a weekend of massive databases. We wanted to balance to the penny. And so, having that kind of double checking is important. Um, the updated EGLE database is going to be with 2025 sampling. Again, I hope that the SIO 2021 and 2022 data gets inputted at least initially. And then when the 2025, by early 2026, I hope to see all the 2025 data in a complete database. And I don't know what it's going to take to make that happen, but anything I can do to help, let me know. And again, we just need a card, and all the other stakeholders need a full updated database to continue to monitor this site. Jeff, did you have a question about this?
It's actually about something else, so I'll wait till you're done if that's okay to defer. I just wanted to get it was a referral to the chat link that was sent about page 99 of the comprehensive land use plan. That's all.
Yeah, let's do that later. Chris, the other Chris.
Yep. Hi. Not sure if this is appropriate, but I wanted to mention for some of our EPA-led sites, they have taken a renewed interest in protecting personally identifiable information and requiring redacted versions of reports being submitted for FOIA purposes. So if EPA takes this over on the Superfund side of it, you may lose access to all those private well results, monitoring wells on private properties. I'm not sure if Chris has feelings on that or if EGLE has other directives to still provide that information, but just wanted to put that out there as a cautionary tale.
Yeah, that's been a concern of mine too. Chris, could you mention your position again for everybody on the screen? Chris Menike.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm with the GHD, environmental engineer, also a citizen of Ann Arbor.
Okay, so your involvement with this is
just a bystander citizen. We also did, I think, some of the Scioto Township private well sampling years ago.
Okay, good to know. Thanks. All right, so we talked about this. This is from a prior card meeting before all the updates were done. The red ones are the newest samples that were done with a 1,000-foot boundary at that time around the site. Now, what's important here is that this basically is outside the Rockworks model, the original Rockworks model that EGLE used. And how did this happen? If we look at back in the early days, Gelman disposed of this dioxane, participated with the state in getting the standards loosened back in 1995. And at that time, I said, by loosening the standards by a factor of 25 and then another 10% later, the reason they loosened the standards back in 95 was part of a joint effort by the Urban Core Mayors group to be able to clean up urban brownfields. So they changed the standards overnight, basically, at the legislature during the Dingell administration, loosened them by a factor of 25 overnight to be able to clean up urban brownfields, not have to have the same strict standard we had. For dioxane, that meant the 3 parts per billion previous existing standard went to 77, and then a couple of years later rounded up to 85. And we were stuck with that for 2 decades. And at the time when that happened back in 95, I said, by applying those standards statewide, you're going to turn some green fields into maybe not brown fields, but at least tan fields. So this is basically now a tan field. Maybe it's not a brown field like happens, in the urban core, but this is now a tan field. So how do you deal with tan fields when the standards weren't tight enough to keep this from happening? Let that sink in. These are homeowner wells. Their wells are being monitored to tell where the dioxane is. And are they going to get replacement water anytime soon with a 7.2 cleanup standard? Now, if it was 0.35, which what the EPA uses for 1 in a million cancer risk over a 70-year lifetime, where 7.2 is a 1 in 100,000 cancer risk over a 32-year lifetime. Like, what contamination could possibly last longer than 32 years? Or who's going to live in an area for more than 32 years? Michigan, this is probably why Pure Michigan quit. We don't have the Pure Michigan program anywhere because this is not Pure Michigan. This is a tan field. Just like this is a tan field. This prohibition zone is now basically a tan field. And what about all these areas here? What about all the homes that are outside this area? What's going to happen in the coming decades? How are we going to deal with this? Are we going to wish and hope that somebody comes up with a treatment system for home size treatment system that people who can afford it can buy and put in to clean their water? Are they going to have to buy bottled water like I do to make sure we're not drinking dioxane mistakenly? And so this is, anyway, that's enough of that rant. Here's the new sampling that's going to be done in 2026, according to the county, the latest map that we have. The green areas are where they're going to be doing sampling. The dark areas where they had recent non-detect sampling, so those are not going to get resampled. And the red dots are where the detections have been found for 2021 to 2025. Again, not all these are on the Gelman Plume maps. And this doesn't show where the sampling was non-detect. There's a whole area, a whole bunch of locations around, hundreds of locations around here that were non-detect. And what I added to this were where Gelman's own sampling had the highest ever readings, maximum readings for various years, recent years. Again, we don't have enough funding from Gelman to pay for annual sampling for all these locations. The budget's constrained. Any questions on that so far? I got to finish up here in 5 minutes. The Triangle property at 3400 Dexter. It's outside the well prohibition zone. It's still a silo parcel, not yet annexed to the city. It's a long abandoned farm. The well there was finally shut down in 2007 after non-detect sampling. Slated for development and annexation to the city, it's a prime location for a nested set of monitoring wells to determine dioxin movement through the homeowner wells. And these I got to go back. I have those queued up here someplace. But anyway, these locations show, let me bring it up on Google Earth to be quicker. So this is the Triangle property. It's outside the prohibition zone. That's why there's a notch here. It's still part of Scioto Township, even though it's in the M14 loop. One of the people on, I think he's still on, where is he here? Jason, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Roger, my name is Jason Icowangeli. I'm a certified planner on staff with the Toll Brothers Housing Company. And this is a piece of property that we're looking at for a potential townhome development. We're currently not the property owners yet. We're still working through the entitlement process, which includes the annexation process like you spoke about just a minute ago. I'm here today in good faith to learn more about the current events. I used to live on Rose Drive, so I lived in this neighborhood.
That's up here on this area, right?
That's right. Yeah, I lived there when I was a younger man before I had children, but I still live in the Ann Arbor Ypsilanti area. So I'm here to just listen, and as we move further along in this project, if there's the opportunity for us to lend a hand and set aside a piece of the property to for one of these sentinel wells, we'll definitely try to help do that. But again, we don't own the property just yet. We won't close on it until we're through the entitlement process, which could take another 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, I'm maintaining that because you're going to be moving a marshy area here, and you're going to set up some holding ponds near M14, that area might be a good location for another monitoring well, since it seems to be in the center line of this offshoot to the north that's contaminated all these homeowner wells. There might be some higher concentrations here, and to have a complete set of monitoring to find out what's really happening here, this would be a great candidate. And if there's higher levels, it might even be a candidate for a purge well to intercept this dioxin. Because people up here need to have some idea of what's some kind of solution to this problem. And to know where the dioxin is, at what levels is really going to help. So
Yeah,
thanks.
no, I look forward to attending these meetings in more frequency now, and we'll continue to coordinate.
Yeah. Again, everybody who's involved has to pay attention, because this is probably the biggest 1,4-dioxin contamination of its type in the country, if not the world, where dioxin was used pure. It's the prime contaminant. There's not a lot of other contaminants involved. we need to, it's exceptional. We need to work, we have to pay attention exceptionally. Back to me.
Jason, my name is Dan Bicknell. Who owns that property now?
It's in private ownership, and the name of it's like a limited liability company's name, but I can't remember who the property owner is exactly. The name slips my mind.
Well, it's on the SIO website.
Does it? Yeah, you could find the information on the Washtenaw counties or SIO townships. Their parcel information.
Does it relate to Gelman or Danaher's ownership?
No, I don't think there's any connection.
Thank you.
So Red Equities doesn't own it then?
No, Red Equities doesn't own it. I'm familiar with Red Equities, and it's not them.
It's not you guys. Thank you.
Okay, let me try to wrap up here in the next minute. Beth resigned as secretary after years of doing it remotely from her daughter's location in North Carolina. We don't have another secretary, so as card chair and with help of others on the board, we'll try to fill in until we get a new secretary. We want to outreach to the affected neighborhoods to maybe try to draft another volunteer. If that doesn't happen, we may have to rely on public entity to pay somebody to do this. So think about that. I won't go through all this, but this is some observations from 3 years ago. And these are some key elements. Some of these have been taken care of, the ones that are grayed out. The marsh area secret sampling has been revealed. And there's a link. And then the Ann Arbor Township's homeowner sampling is not in the database. Well, and SIOS especially, but that's going to be taken care of from what Chris said. But there's still some of these other outstanding issues. I'll just mention that, and I won't go through it all because you have the links here, and you can go back to the previous November 2022 card meeting. I'm going to be talking about some of these other things in future meetings, creek sheds versus aquifer sheds, where the dioxane's moving under the ground different than what it is at surface water on the surface. We talked about this briefly at the Parkland Plaza parcel. This will be a future issue, and thanks everybody for paying attention on this. Because again, we don't want to have to relocate monitoring wells that are already in place if we don't have to. This last item here, I will mention. I found this article that pure dioxane production is up. I was a little surprised about this, that people are still manufacturing using pure dioxane like Gelman used, 850,000 pounds over 20 years. But the research on what happens, how to fix it, is down. Yale Superfund research on dioxane got their funding cut by half. And one of the things they were looking for was home treatment systems. We don't know what the future of that's going to be, but something's wrong when we're creating a new forever chemical in higher quantities, and we're cutting down on the research of what that might end up in the environment. Just want to plant that seed with everybody. So that's all I have. Any last minute issues that people have? Let me go back to the agenda here. Well, one thing here I did want to mention here, this agenda now has been organized by stakeholder. But as we saw today, some of these items involved other stakeholders. So we had to bring other stakeholders in. So I want people to think about maybe it's time to go back to organizing the agenda by topic instead of by stakeholder entity, so that anybody involved tangentially on the topic can weigh in without having to wait for their turn. We interjected people as we needed, but think about that, whether that's a better way to do it. It's not like stakeholder people are coming, they do their thing and they leave, because they have to pay attention to the rest of the meeting too. So I just want to think about whether that's a better way of doing it than organizing by stakeholder group. Anyway, that's all I have. Jack, I'll let you wrap it up.
Jeff has his hand up. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, James is right about getting that the official deadline for the CLUP comments is by January 5th. But if they're not turned in by December 11th at noon, they're not going to appear on the Planning Commission conversation, the last public conversation that'll be held about it before the comment procedure closes, which is their December 16th meeting. And so it's really the people are considering the deadline is December 11th at noon. And then the link that she sent,
Could you repeat that?
see it,
Could you repeat that more slowly?
I'm sorry, the December 11th is at noon is the sort of unofficial deadline for comments on the CLUP, the master plan redo, because that's the deadline for comments to be aggregated and sent to Planning Commission, which is their last meeting before the January 5th state law deadline for comments closes. And so it's really December 11th at noon, or it won't be in front of them. They won't have your comment to consider if they even do consider comments. And if you look in the master plan, water treatment is only talked about 4 times in there on pages 90, 99, and 105. And it's considered by people who are skeptical of this massive growth planning that the plan doesn't do enough to describe and decide how we're going to deal with the lack of infrastructure that's available to actually handle this growth, right? And it says nothing about what if we have to extend water to wells, no matter who pays for it. And one of the planners at the city gave a pretty decent presentation about how restricted we are with water treatment and wastewater treatment,
especially,
and that basically the 80,000 new residents that are going to be called for in this plan is an unmanageable amount of growth. And what are we going to do, except to bond, $1 billion to build new freshwater and wastewater treatment plants, right? And so I've never felt that Gelman was properly addressed. In the page 99 that you see, don't use the search for the word Gelman. Don't use the PDF summary of pages, because it appears that there's only 90 pages in that. And so I immediately went to the appendix, and it wasn't in there either. So search for the word Gelman if you want to find page 99, because somehow the PDF index is off on that document.
Or search for dioxane, maybe one reference.
Yeah, there's one, and Gelman is in there four times, and it's all in this same little "did you know" bar. And so somebody could make a comment, "Hey, is this enough being said about it?" Probably not. I don't know. I just wanted to add that about the sort of abbreviated, unofficial deadline. Michelle Bennett from the city was the woman who sort of raised the flag about the pressure that this is going to put on our water and wastewater treatment systems. And then I don't really know. I'm not sure I fully understand it, but she has somehow been backed off of that position. You haven't heard too much about that since she made that shocking revelation, not so shocking to those of us who understand the physics of the matter. Anyway, it's worth it to get your comments in. There's not a lot of hope that they're really being listened to. It's one of those situations where you feel as though I mean, I hate to say it, but like the fix is in, I don't know how we're going to do it. I got to go back and read what you said earlier in the meeting. It talked about the extending these wells, if there's homeowner wells that are over the criteria and they have to be replaced with city water, and who was going to pay for it and all that. And I kind of missed what we talked about there. I didn't really understand because I got to go back and look at previous meetings and read the documents. But I guess any extension of our system is an add-on, whether it's, building the Dean down on Madison, which is they're going to call D1, going all the way down to the football stadium, basically. Start tonight at Planning Commission. They're looking at a petition to build a D1 building on Madison between 4th and 5th, 116 feet. So our downtown is getting extended, and it's just every toilet, everything that's sitting out there in the system is volume that we have to deal with, and we're pushing the edge of our volume now. And I have a friend who up in Arrowwood, and she's really interested in city business, and she was asking me about Gelman because I told her I was going to sit in on the meeting today, and she said, "Well, what are we going to do?" And about the cleanup, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I said if it was me, I'd be having the city focus on treating it, dealing with the treatment when it's inevitably into our systems, and building that, making sure that that's built into our expansion of the water treatment facility up there, and let EGLE and hopefully EPA deal with the source issue. I don't think it's going to ever. I mean, I don't want to be grim, but we're not going to get that out in our lifetimes, and so I think we should be focusing on treatment. And
well, we should do both.
I don't trust that we are. I guess that's what I wanted to say.
We should do both.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Gelman has already removed
made great strides.
Gelman has already removed more dioxin than they said was down there.
Yeah, that's what I told her, and I said, so that's kind of where we're at, like, what are you supposed to say? It's like Kathy said with other issues, it's a all fronts push, It's the only way anything's going to get done.
And the amount of pumping they're doing to remove this big chunk here in the center is at the same rate that they've been pumping all these years. And yet we still have this kind of thing happening.
Jeff, Dan, the other side of it is that you had an Ann Arbor City groundwater extraction well. You lost it because of the dioxin contamination.
Right.
So one thought when you're bringing up treatment is, okay, fine, Gelman, you've caused us to lose all of this groundwater volume. Maybe you should treat the well that's been contaminated so that the city can use that water in the existing system that's there.
Yeah, I mean, that's like part of the mix, right? Like we need groundwater plus the surface water to get our treatment.
Well, you had my point is that you had groundwater in with the river. It was a mix. You had the city, you had this extraction well that's in the Plume now, and you had the river. You had three basic sources. But because Gelman contaminated your municipal well, okay, they can be that to provide treatment to that municipal well, which is hooked up to the rest and was hooked up to the rest of your water distribution system.
Yeah.
So I'm just pointing out that there's a resource. There's a resource that existed for the city that Gelman contaminated that you can put treatment on to increase the volume of water going into the water treatment system.
Yep.
You don't have to put in a new well. You just got to treat the well that's contaminated.
You're saying you treat it on the way out of that well before it gets into our master mix or whatever.
Exactly. You put a treatment unit near that well.
Yeah.
Okay. So
that's a whole volume that's been lost because of Gelman. And the city could ask Gelman to deal with that issue. Instead of what you did is you just turned it off. You just turned off that well.
Okay.
Well, fine. Turn it back on after treatment, please.
Yeah, but somebody's got to pay for the treatment.
The source is our limitation. I think it's our treatment throughput that's the limitation for growth.
We're both past the end of our meeting at this point in time. So
Kathy, you had a last comment?
I'm gonna You go ahead.
Yes. As we approach year end, I just want to acknowledge the tremendous effort of our community members and a special thank you to Roger Rayle. We wouldn't be in this position without the advocacy of CARD, and we need to remember it. And while it looks like the politics are going in our direction right now, we can't take it for granted. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Sorry to cut
you,
you off
Roger.
that important discussion you guys are having. We'll have to return to it next month. Our next meeting is Tuesday, January 7th at 6 p.m. I look forward to seeing all of you.
Jack, did you say 7th?
6.
6th, okay.
Thanks, everyone.
January 6th.
It's right there on the agenda.
All right.
Yeah, I thought you said 7th, even though it did say 6th on the agenda. That's why I asked.
I appreciate the help.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Roger, are you still there?
I'm here.
I had a question for you.
Well, let me stop the recording.
Yeah.